I got a question on Discord, and I want to make sure that when you guys give me a question, I'm not answering it as your question, but a question generally. So I went ahead and put this question into my Google Drive. That way that person gets to be anonymous. And also, if they reference the word I kind of want to neutralize it to the general I, because, you know, if they're asking a question, you probably have a question. That's kind of my theory on people, is if one person has a question, 20 other people have the same question. So we're going to read this question today, dissect it together on what we owe one another. And I think it's a very difficult question to answer, but in a philosophical sense, a much easier one to answer. And so we're going to dive into this question from a philosophical lens. And again, just remember, as we dissect this question, we're neutralizing it from the person that supplied it, and we're looking at it as a great question of philosophical wonder. Okay, so here's the question here. You'll see I've put it into a Google Doc. I'm going to break it down. I actually broke it down literally visibly so you guys can see the visible breakdown, but then we're going to go ahead and read it that way as well. So the start of it says, I've been working on being more constructive for the last year in therapy. This has brought a lot of self-reflection, and I would love it if you can engage with this topic, but no pressure. Already excited? Let's do it. How do we know when our actions are constructive or not? How can we foster more constructive interactions with one another? So I did have a clarifying conversation with them in the Discord. If you guys are in the Discord, you can see that conversation, but I just want to pull up a really quick definition of constructive because it's so subjective to the bubble. But constructive is having or intended to have a useful or beneficial purpose, which is really optimistic and positive and just like, it's really great. Like, oh my gosh, like who doesn't love constructive criticism or constructive advice or a constructive meditative, experience? Everybody loves to be constructive. Am I right? Well, maybe not so. Maybe that's just a philosophy bubble thing. I'm not sure. But, constructive is a very positive word. I have hesitancy and concern that it can be twisted into a negative interaction. So let's avoid that. But let's read through this question and I'll explain why I'm like worried about it becoming something negative for people. It goes on to say, I found the internet often brings out the worst in people. And even when we call out even when we call out other people for not being constructive, we fail to do it in a constructive way ourselves. So true. And if you guys will recall, there's a video I have up on my channel where you guys give me constructive or maybe not constructive feedback. And I'm trying to explain the differences between constructive criticism and just criticism. Just getting criticism isn't useful, right? Like, nobody needs criticism in their life. What we need is constructive criticism. But the dilemma is that when and this is the negative part that I'm concerned about, is when somebody feels like you're doing something wrong, have they introspected to make sure that they're not projecting their values onto you? Have they introspected to make sure that when they're constructive or constructively criticizing you, have they made sure that this is helpful to you, or is it just helpful to them? So I want to be very careful that before we give constructive criticism or constructive advice, or you try to be constructive for one another, that we make sure that it's for this person and it's symbiotic, positive symbiotic, and not just for ourselves to feel better. Because what I've noticed, especially amongst neurodivergents with a really high sense of justice, which, remember, your feeling of like your strong sense of justice is also a disability, because you might be pressuring people to adhere to a value system that they don't believe in. So you have to really make sure that when you're giving advice for people, making a prescription, which I try really hard not to do on this channel, that we make sure it's not at the expense of that person, right? And on that note, I really want to make it clear that I am not making prescriptions, that when I'm speaking from my perspective, I'm only just sharing my perspective, and it doesn't need to involve you. So a good example is I've been on this journey. I'm really excited. I'm in a transition period. And I use this metaphor to explain it because I'm a very, visual kind of learner. And I was thinking about I've been spending the last 5 or so years just in the most beautiful oasis, just vibing out. I found this beautiful, great forest with this beautiful lake. And all of a sudden, it has become clear to me that there's a beautiful mountain in front of me that I've just never noticed before. And I'm like, oh, I never noticed this beautiful mountain. I would like to get to the peak of this mountain, but at the expense of leaving this beautiful oasis behind. But I know it's the right thing to do because now it's the next journey of consciousness. It's not about, oh, my career is going to be better. I'm getting to the next stage of my career. That is just a consequence or a positive consequence of the fact that I am becoming a better person. So from Brittany, my journey, the new transition we're doing on this channel, this is my journey. You do not have to come with me. Okay. I'm just doing it because it makes sense for my joy. So I'm going to climb this mountain to get to the peak, and it's going to take me a bit, 2 to 4 years, right? It's going to take me a bit. I just know myself. It's going to take me a bit, but you do not have to come with me. It is not about you. And if you come with me and you're climbing the mountain, I ain't going to catch you, girl, if you fall down. Like, just be aware that this is my journey. It has nothing to do with you. Right? It has nothing to do with other YouTubers. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I just need to leave this place that I've been, and I need to get to the top of this mountain. And it's not for anyone but myself to get to the next journey of my consciousness. And again, myself, my relationship with myself. So again, the benefit of doing this is that everything around me will grow. Everything around me will get better. But I'm not trying to be better at my job first. I'm trying to be better at being Brittany, which of course means I will be better at my job. Okay, so it's about which one are you focusing on first. So some people in two bubbles will say, I'm going to be better at my job. Okay, but what does that have to do with being better with your relationship with self? So if the money is the focus, then you're not having the focus be the consciousness. And that's why I say people, I think, who are more introspective down the line realize it's not about money, but it's about stability. It's not about popularity. It's about good community. It's not about being the prettiest. It's about being happy with your vessel, right? So I think the lessons you end up learning by climbing the peak of the mountain is different than the lessons you learn by being the greatest at your company. And both lessons are valuable for different bubbles and different goals. But for Brittany, I need to climb this mountain. And again, it's all about me. So I'm not trying to moralize it to you. I'm not trying to say you're a bad person if you don't climb the mountain. I'm just trying to say that, hey, it just became like, actually, I can see it now. And I'm like, oh, I never noticed this beautiful mountain. I'm going to climb it. I just never, I'm at this stage in my life where my eyes have once again, oh, this is it. And that's what I think introspection, extrospection is. That's what I think deconstruction is. That's what I think the point of philosophy is. It's to actually be able to eventually see all the possibilities instead of just the ones that have been presented to you in your bubble. So for me, and I think this is so related to Wicked right now, right? Defying gravity, this idea is about like, I'm done playing someone else's game, right? The lyrics are like, I'm done playing someone else's game, basically with somebody else's constraints. Like, I don't want to be told that your construct is my construct when I know there's more possibilities. And I don't care if everyone thinks I'm crazy for climbing this mountain, you don't have to climb it. Right? Okay. So that's why I just love Wicked right now. It's in my head. Chet says, why does one exclude the other? Can you be more specific? I'm not sure what you're referencing. Do you mean the job versus the self? Chet says, could I ask how your chronic illness interacts with your journey, or is it not intertwined? Well, of course I take it into consideration, but when you think about who I am in this story, like my consciousness, right? Realistically, I think my rheumatologist, the conversation I had with my rheumatologist and I basically explains it. He told me that people with my chronic illness can make one of two decisions. They can either work out and get healthy and make it work even though they're in pain, or a lot of them succumb to the illness and don't do much. And I think both have its own validity. Both are reasonable. It's definitely not easy, but I never thought life was. And so I just happen to fall into the category of person that regardless of the obstacles in my way, I will either move around them, above them, or destroy them in the process to get through. I'm climbing this mountain, and nothing and no one is going to stop me from getting to my peak. Also, I'm going to die in like 70 years. So a girl ain't got no time to wait. And that's just who I am in the story. I know so many people who have messaged me and said, my family members, my loved ones, they got diagnosed with your illness and they gave up on being a parent. They gave up on being a mother. They gave up on being a sibling. And it's just, everyone's got a journey. That isn't my personality type. And again, this is my biological experience. And this is, so I don't even know if I should give myself the credit, right? Because this is just my biological experience. Ever since I was a child, if you challenged me, I just saw it as something exciting. Okay, like I'm in chronic pain. How do I still manage? Okay. I'm neurodivergent. How do I still manage? Okay. I'm gay. How do I still manage? I'm the black sheep in the family. Okay. How do I still manage? It's like, for me, and this is why I love philosophy, it has freed me from the burden of an obligation to either succeed or not succeed. I can do whatever I want, because that is the realization you get to come to when you realize like you're born free, but then you have to deal with the obstacles of the world. And the obstacles of the world are scary and dangerous and life-threatening. But I'd rather like die trying to be free than live feeling trapped. Again, because of my biological experience, right? Like I don't even know if what is free will at this point? I don't know. I'm just doing what I think makes sense within my joy. Does that answer your question? Chat says, or YouTube says, yes, job and money and versus self. So once again, they're two different journeys that coincide, but you have to decide which one is priority. So for me, money is not my priority over my relationship with consciousness. But because my relationship with consciousness, as it hits positive symbiosis, tends to benefit my wallet, it's a win-win. But not all people are like this. You might be a person who goes on a journey of consciousness and then ends up realizing like you want to live like a monk in the woods and not care about money, right? Or you might be somebody who says, at the sacrifice of my wallet, I don't want to look into who I am as a person in a deeper sense. I'd rather just be very good at my job, right? Like we're watching Sex and the City and dissecting it, deconstructing it in the Discord right now. And one of the things that stands out to me as Big as a character is he's in his 40s and 50s throughout the series, depending on when you're watching. And he's not introspective. He never deconstructs. He's like a big baby who's worth a lot of money, like a lot of money, millions of dollars, right? And you're watching this show of these women and men who never introspect or deconstruct. And they basically are as stunted as people from the beginning of the series to the reboot, but their money goes up, their wallet goes up, their reputation at work is positive. But them as people, they never get better. And that is one way to live, right? Like if you want to live that way, you can. But for me, Brittany, I would feel trapped. I would feel stifled. My biological experience, I would feel like I was dying, basically. And so I can't do it. But you might be able to. Chet says, I think for me, being good at my job and having the resulting money would give me the freedom to focus on self. I mean, for sure, right? It definitely helps, right? It definitely helps. No doubt, Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows us that getting those basics really does help. So you might be onto something for your own journey. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going with the document. Okay. So I found the internet often brings out the worst in people. Okay. So personally, being constructive comes incredibly hard to me. I'm an instigator of mischief, and this is rarely constructive. I relate to watching you change your language and talking about how it's going to take you 4 years to change, because that is what being constructive is like for me. It does take me time. I'm a slow transitioner, okay? They go on to say, every day I catch myself not being constructive, and I think this is why it is so easy to take steps in the wrong direction, ? Catching myself and reflecting is a step in the right direction, though, because it increased my self-awareness. Absolutely. So when we're going through the journey, you will catch yourself. You remember how I did that stream saying like, I'm going to change my language. And someone said, can you show us like your past mistakes? And I'm like, I won't have to. I'll show it to you in this stream. I'm going to show it to you in 3 months, because it's not about being perfect. I will show you, if you pay attention to my journey, okay, if you take me off whatever weird pedestal you might have put me on, not your fault, it happens, you will realize Brittany makes the same mistakes everybody else makes. She just has a different relationship with them. And this is not to punish ourselves. You don't need to take me off a pedestal and decide, oh, Brittany's useless. In the same way, you don't want to take yourself off some pedestal and think you're useless. You're just having an experience that will be again, a trajectory up, but you will have your ups and downs. As long as you're on the macro heading up in your life, you will have your normal dips. The worry is when you're hitting towards another absolute like ground zero, when you're starting from scratch, when you're not learning the lessons the universe has sent you. So one of the things I want to focus on is that being constructive and knowing you're being constructive comes from the data at hand. Do I have the proof that my actions are benefiting me in the long run, that I'm actually learning the lesson, right? Am I learning the lesson? So an example of that in my own personal life could be marrying the wrong person to some extent, because for me in my journey, there's nothing wrong with marrying the wrong person. It happens. But for the lessons that I had learned in my 20s, I had enough information to not pick, once again, a very wrong partner for me. Maybe a somewhat bad partner, maybe a somewhat incompatible partner, but not another toxic relationship. So the fact that I had a gap between my toxic life and picking my next partner and it being a very healthy relationship was proof to me, again, because we're looking for data, that I had learned the lesson the universe had been sending me, right? That I had learned the lesson of my life, that I had learned to find the patterns of abuse and toxicity I wasn't willing to engage with. Even if everybody around me was saying I was being too picky, everybody around me was too toxic to listen to. I wasn't interested in people giving me advice when I didn't want the marriages that they had, and I certainly didn't want the relationships I kept picking. So the fact that I had chosen the right person, the fact that we had agreed that we had chosen the right people, and the fact that our marriage and relationship continues to be incredibly wonderful says to me, okay, I learned the lesson. And this goes with everything from working out to work to even this change I'm making right now. I suffocate in stagnation as a human. So if you're the kind of person that finds yourself suffocating in your own stagnation, the question is, what's the right decision to make that doesn't destroy everything you've built, but build on top of it? Or have you built your life on a rocky foundation and you actually do have to start again from rock bottom, right? So in my life, I've probably hit rock bottom like 3 or 4 times where I've like had to start again from scratch. And then finally I started to pick up momentum where my foundation was really good and I could run with it. Right. So that's my experience. Your experience is going to be dependent on you. Right. Okay. Let's keep going. It says, it's like I've been walking on a line my whole life and taking a step in either direction comes equally easy to me. Choosing to be constructive is hard for everyone. True. I mean, we just elected someone who fails miserably at this as president of the United States, and we expect the average person to do better. I think yes. To quote Sheedy from the Bad Place, no, The Good Place, we should be thinking about, quote, what we owe to each other. And I think we owe each other. I think we owe constructiveness to each other. Okay, this is where I want to heed caution, and I want to say, what do we owe to each other? And the letter ends, I think we owe constructiveness to each other. I think this is what this person is saying. So I don't want to speak for them. So we're gonna say this is a general question. I think what we owe is constructiveness to ourselves and therefore to each other. Everything you want for society, you should want for yourself first. And I think the dilemma, and this goes back to sort of, not to reference him, but Jordan Peterson's Make Your Bed. The irony is that he keeps forgetting to make his, is that you do have to make your bed. You do have to take care of yourself first. And I think this is what every philosophy bubble teaches you. Every basic psychology bubble teaches you. Every relationship with self starts with the self and exudes out, right? So we want to help our 6-foot radius. We want to foundation ourselves to help pick up others, right? And I think that's what we owe to each other. We owe constructiveness to ourselves. And then that will reflect in our life and that will help benefit other people, right? What do you guys think? Made it in chat says how we care for ourselves is how we care for others. And I think this is, a dilemma that I've run into plenty of times where, if you tell an abusive person, treat people how you want to be treated, that abusive person might not know how to treat people outside of being abusive. So the golden rule also has to have a constructiveness to it. Treat people how you want to be treated, caveat, but always make sure that it's for their benefit and not just for yours. And if it's just for your benefit, make sure it's about you. So if I'm doing this for my benefit, right? If I'm putting down boundaries with people in my life and saying like, I love you, but I need distance because let's say I'm climbing my mountain, right? So I've put on my gear, my friends and family and the people around me are like, hey, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to climb that mountain. They're like, but if you climb that mountain, like we can't come with you. And I would say, okay, I love you. Good luck on your journey, And then I would start climbing that mountain. I'm not doing it at the expense of my family and friends, but it might feel that way to them because now they don't get to hang out with me or interact with me in the same way. But instead, they should let me go to let me find my joy and be good in my joy, right? Like if I converted to being a nun for some reason, let's say I was single and I went into a nunnery and didn't talk to the rest of the world for 80 years just to pray for sinners, they would love it. My parents would be like, oh my gosh, she found God. She's praying for 80 years. They would love it. But because I'm not in a nunnery and because I'm climbing a mountain that they can't come with me on that journey, maybe they'll feel, okay, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but maybe they'll feel like I'm abandoning them. But you have to learn that people aren't abandoning you. They're following their joy, right? In the same way that you're not abandoning your family, you're following your joy. And I think this is really difficult because we're made to feel obligated to a bubble that isn't about our joy. It's about making other people feel, through lies often, comfortable in their stagnation. So we owe constructiveness to ourselves and we owe the world to live by an example. Again, owe is a very heavy word because I do really believe we're evolved animals on a planet, which means I don't actually believe fundamentally that we owe anything to anyone, including ourselves. I don't actually believe we owe it to ourselves. I believe this is a value you put on yourself to say that I want to live up to this value of being in sync with my joy, which then makes it something you owe yourself. Now, the irony, and this is very philosophy, a little bit advanced, so just stay with me here. Technically, if we had access to the objective, I think it would tell us that our joy is what we owe ourselves. Only because it seems, and this is just what I'm picking up right now, it seems that when people are in sync with their joy, they are literally in sync with the universe. Like a calling in Catholicism, and I'm sure in your bubbles you might say it as well, there's a thing called a calling. And when you actually meet your calling, when you actually find your calling, everything fits into place. And I think when you find that in life, like that sense of meaning, so if you go to Vervaeke's meaning crisis, I think Vervaeke's speaking about that sort of calling. I found my calling. I know what I'm doing. And it took me a really long time to find it. And I think I've really found it. And every time I adhere to my calling, I feel like I'm one with the universe. I feel like I'm making all the right decisions. Everyone around me seems to benefit. Everyone around me seems happier. And I fundamentally am more at peace. So as long as as long as I stay within my calling, I'm usually in sync, right? So this is what I want you to pay attention to when we talk about constructiveness, when we talk about what we owe the world. It's exactly what we owe ourselves, to be in sync with our joy, to be in sync with our happiness, to be in sync with our purpose and our meaning, to know what our calling is and to answer the call. What if one person's joy is harmful to another? If it is not, is it not truly joy? Harm is specific and subjective. So first we would have to define harm. What would harm be? I find that true joy that is in sync with the universe has some harm to it, but never the destructive harm that is unnecessary. There's so much unnecessary harm in the universe because people are not in sync with their joy. So my theory right now, we don't know, right? My theory right now, based off of everything I read and my understanding of people, is that when people are in sync with their joy, their calling, their meaning, they cause only the amount of necessary, though on occasion unnecessary harm. That's my theory. I really do believe the more introspective you are, the more extrospective you are, the less harm you cause overall. But I think you still have to be a person on a journey who learns a lesson. So you will cause harm, unnecessary harm on occasion, but not to the extent you were prior. And I think that's the really catch-22 of it all, is that you're not going to get to a specific place of introspection where you're like, I never cause harm. It's like, nope, you will sometimes cause harm. And then you have to be okay with the reality that you won't ever be perfect. Which is why in religion and the myth of religion, they kind of teach you that the only perfect being was God. Because truly, to have a perfect relationship with existing and existence is so dishonest. When we think about our biological experience, I mean, what a dishonest perspective to think anyone could ever be perfect, right? And then we see it throughout life that it just isn't true. Chat says, Britt, do you think someone can practice these concepts and not know they are practicing these concepts? Sure. I think everyone, I think in life, well, okay, like take me for an example. If you look at the levels, I was experiencing the levels and didn't have a name for it, right? Like I was experiencing this relationship with being alive and I didn't know what to call it. So I like called it something, but it was happening whether I knew it was happening or not. Once I realized it was happening, I could put a name to it and then, build off something. But even prior to naming it, it was an experience I was having. So I do think people can have an experience and not really understand it. But that's why you live a life that gets you tools to kind of like realize. You have a realization, right? And hopefully the more introspective you are, the more optimistic you are, because you're going in the beautiful, like you're having a realization of how beautiful existing is. Like life is insanely amazing. Like it's an amazing experience. I mean, the fact that we're alive right now is an amazing statistical experience. I just think we often are so in our lowest relationship of biological experience that we can't actually truly be grateful for that because we're too busy with everything else, which is so fair. And this is why Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually really amazing, because he does have like that really good understanding, of course, but I don't think people process it for what it is. I think people always get stuck somewhere in the middle of the pyramid because they don't even understand the point of getting to the top of the mountain. So once again, I am aiming for the peak of the mountain. Now, maybe I say to you, I'm going to climb this mountain and you think, oh, Brittany's just trying to get to the other side. No. I am not trying to get to the other side of the mountain. I'm trying to get to the peak of the mountain. And then they'll say, but what's the point of getting to the peak? What's up there? I don't know, but I know that it's worth finding out. I am following that joy. I'm following the calling to the top of that mountain. I'm going to get to the top of the mountain, and then that Brittany will decide what to do next. But this Brittany is not trying to get to the other side of the mountain. So she's not going to take shortcuts around the base of the mountain. She's not going to like change path. She's going to the peak of that mountain. And then that Brittany will decide what to do with that information. Because I don't know. This Brittany right here is just doing the foundational work. So that Brittany 4 years from now can do what she can do with whatever tools I end up giving her, right? So all of our life is spent, if you're on that journey, collecting tools, right? To give our future selves. So whatever I'm doing right now, I'm doing it with Brittany in mind for the future. What am I doing right now that allows her to, okay, I'm 45. What do I want to do now? Well, let's look at my arsenal of tools. Let's look at the wisdom I've curated. This Brittany you know now could never have existed without the Brittany in her 20s who was really messed up. No regrets, because every single thing I did, I always did with good intentions. Every single thing I did to the best of my ability. I loved 110%, I gave 110%, and I hurt myself 110%. All in the name of knowing myself better and my purpose for existing. And in every way, I have tried my hardest to learn the lesson the universe has given me. And in every way, the data shows me that I am learning those lessons, even as I continue to make mistakes, even as I continue to accidentally and without intent hurt people. But the road to hell is paved in good intentions. And even I have good intentions. So I try really hard not to have too many good intentions, because I really don't want to have to put the burden on the world for something that's only interesting to me, which is why I'm not making a prescription of you should climb the mountain. No, I need to climb the mountain. And if you try to follow me to the peak of this mountain, again, this is a metaphor. If you try to follow me to the peak of this mountain and it is not your joy, it will be bad for you. It will hurt you. So hear me when I say this. Do not look at my life and think, I'm going to do exactly what Brittany did. If it is not meant for you, it will hurt you. It will not be the right tool for you. What you're supposed to do is look at the tools that worked for me and see if they work for you, but if they don't, throw them away. So I'm warning you right now, girls, if you see what I'm doing on my YouTube channel, you see what I'm doing in public, and you think I'm going to be just like that, does it coincide with your joy? Let's see. Chet says, I've always thought about harm reduction on the macro level, but I haven't really thought about it in the individual level until now. Ooh, I love that. Maiden says, you discovered that there are levels to reality that are only made available to us via profound transformative, thank you, experience. Chat says you put into words exactly what I was trying to search for when you described the level. Something just clicked in my brain. We love an epiphany. Let's go. Yes. Chat says, Brittany, do you ever struggle with the feeling like you are too internally critical, overthinking, analytical? I'm asking because I feel this way sometimes. I'm not much of a perfectionist. but I am a person who is critical of herself. So I never try to be perfect, but sometimes I do struggle, of course, with those like intrusive thoughts of, am I even doing enough? Can I do more? Now, of course, I'm always battling a memory of past Brittany who wasn't chronically ill and who was more functional in some ways. But also, I'm also just always learning new things about myself, recontextualizing my brain and who I am. And I'm learning where those thoughts come from always. And so you'll never not, if you go on this journey, you never stop learning about yourself, which is actually kind of exciting. You never stop realizing like, oh, that's why I do this. And this is interesting. Oh, so this is why I do this right now. I wonder if this will carry on into my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? How many people do we know in their 80s and 90s who are just having a discovery about themselves? There's no wrong time to start the journey, but everyone's on a different timeline of it. So being critical of yourself is just a part of the journey. And so you must learn to be constructive with yourself, and not just critical. You don't need to criticize yourself, but you should be constructive, which are very different. One's optimistic, one's negative, right? Hold yourself accountable, but don't punish yourself. Don't punish people. Don't punish yourself. Give people opportunity to do better while still holding them accountable. But if punishment is your goal, you've missed the point. Beating yourself up, punishing other people, being cruel to other people, this is not harm reduction. This is not harm reduction. So you must harm reduce with yourself and therefore harm reduce with others, right? Okay? But don't punish yourself and don't punish other people. I feel like that's really important to pay attention to because we live in a world where it's so funny as a YouTuber, if I try to punish people, like if I use language that sounds like punishing language, they're like, oh, you're so cruel, Brittany. If I use language that says don't punish people, be kind, they're like, oh, you can't just be kind to bad people, Brittany. Don't listen to people. They don't know what they want. Don't listen to people. They do not know what they want. Listen to your joy. Listen to yourself. Okay? Do you know what you want? Because you must live in a reality that allows you to accept that you must hold people accountable without punishing them, especially yourself. But do not listen to the world that is not happy no matter what you do. If you are unhappy no matter what you do, you are still on that journey of figuring that out. You know, the other day in chat, somebody said, prove to me that you don't need $1 million to be happy. Like, my life is fabulous. I don't even make 6 figures, girls, on a regular basis. I'm not making that kind of money, okay? I've made that money once. Once in all of my life have I ever made 6 figures a year. Otherwise, I make a solid income. I'm very happy, right? But I don't need to make 6 figures to be joyful. I didn't even need to make 50K a year to be joyful. Okay, that does not mean I don't stress to pay bills like everybody else. It doesn't mean that we're not stressed to pay our mortgages, which I do not have and probably won't have for 10 years, right? It doesn't mean that those things aren't a reality. It just means they weren't related to my joy. My joy exists outside of those things. Because for Brittany and her biological experience and her journey, it seems to relate very much to a lot of those philosophy bubbles where it never was about the money. It was about being able to have access to taking a path of responsibility, because it is a path of responsibility to self and to the environment that coincided with my joy, that let me be free enough to make that decision, which of course in this world, money is a tool to have that relationship. So you need some basic income, right? That's why I like to be, that's why I love to work, I think. But mostly I just love to do it as well. I see money as a tool, like a hammer. Like I have a nail I need to put into the wall, but I can't do it without a hammer. So I need money, right? Like money is that tool to buy a hammer. You know what I mean? It's the hammer to put the nail in the wall. So I just look at it that way, but I don't like think about, my relationship with money. Like, one of my friends was like, hey, I think I want to be a billionaire. And I was like, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. Just work on being a millionaire or just work on being joyful. And they're like, I'm going to be the first ethical billionaire. I was like, you can't. You won't. It's not a thing. Like, it's not a thing. And that's a journey that I learned, right? Because if you grew up in a capitalistic bubble, they're going to teach you that there's a thing as an ethical billionaire. Not yet. Never been proven. So we have a dream around a God, never been proven, an ethical billionaire, never been proven. And this is what people bank their whole reality on. Do you want to live your life in a fantasy of something that has never been done and something so outside of sphere of reality? Or do you want to go for something attainable? I recommend something attainable, even if nobody else is doing it. So the thing that I do, like climbing the peak of the mountain, it might not be what most people are doing, but I know it's attainable because some people have done it. And I know that even if it looks like I'm the first one to do it in my bubble, I know I'm not, right? I'm using the evidence of the people around me who have done it to be like, okay, if they can do it, I'm going to do it. And I think I'm one of these people in terms of categories. I think I'm this type of person. So know who you are in the story. So you know what's reasonable and like accessible to you. And for all those people that think they're going to be ethical billionaires, I love that for you. Good luck. Good luck, you know? Chet says, Britt, I know you'd leave your family behind when you climb the mountain. Does it go the same for your partner if he was not ready for that journey? Just to clarify, I'm not leaving anyone behind. They just can't come with me. So my journey is solo from my partner. My journey exists outside of my partner. So I wouldn't have to leave my partner behind. He would just cheer me on from the bottom of the mountain because he is my greatest cheerleader. He is my Sam to my Frodo. Okay. Which he actually said yesterday. So that's why I'm bringing it up. But he's like, I'll be your Sam. And I was like, oh my God, stop. Like, he is not here to keep me from climbing my mountain. He's here to cheer me on while he goes on his own journey. Because maybe his mountain is actually like a river he has to swim, right? I just like a mountain because I feel like I want to climb this mountain, sing the hills are alive with music, you know? But my partner and I have separate journeys, but our life coincides, right? So like my family and friends are still in my life, but they're not going to stop me from going on my journey. They might not cheerlead me from the bottom because they don't understand it, but my partner understands it. So he's like, go Brittany, go Brittany, go Brittany. And I'm just like, and I'm like climbing up this mountain. You know what I mean? And that's how I kind of look at our life is like, maybe for him, it's like crossing a river. But in the end, we're still doing life together. In the end, we still end up in the same place, just in a different way. Our journeys will always end up in the same place because we're both aiming for like a very specific relationship with consciousness, right? But I'm not here to make him climb a mountain if he's meant to do something else. Yeah, as long as he's coinciding with his joy, I'm cheering him on and vice versa, right? Okay, any thoughts? Anything to wrap up this topic before we move on?
Stuck in my head, in real life while in bed, my belly's being fed and I'm okay. I'm just fine, yet all I do is whine, not to you in my mind, cause I know I don't make sense. I've been nothing but blessed, so why's my life a mess? Please tell me, cause I'm sick of thinking, yeah, I'm sick of reaching out for the truth and living life as a fool. Dun, dun, dun.